Tonga. Leave meeting. Kia ora koutou, ko tuku ingoa Will. I'm a designer, a lot of the time I'm also a researcher as well, from the Tariwa idea, Indigenous design Aotearoa, innovation Aotearoa. This is my homahi Lucy, who's very kindly supporting me today. Really appreciate it. Hopefully there's a few more parts for you to talk to after this. But yeah, we've been very fortunate to have had the opportunity to lead this particular kaupapa on behalf of your organizations. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the passionate people who contributed to this particular kaupapa. Those participants who were involved in our interviews as well as our workshop, those who shared their voices, their whakaaro, and their recommendations on how you can enhance your digital services to be more inclusive for those of who are speaking to Reo Māori, those of who I'd also like to take a moment to, I guess, acknowledge the hard work that was put in by Georgia Gifford and as well as Lewis Johnson, who were unable to be here today. One with COVID and one I think is graduating from Victoria University, so shout out to him. But yeah, it's a shame that we weren't able to be here to hear this. But yeah. So, ko te reo Māori te tātou ki te ao Māori. Māori language is the door to the Māori world. If this doesn't immediately make sense, the hope is at the very end of this, by the time we conclude, all that better mean something. So over the past 50 years, Māori language revitalisation has seen significant milestones to its development efforts. A number of our mama, our papa, our koro, Ngā Tupuna, and the Homi, who have understood the importance of our reo and Ngāti Kama and what it would mean if this was to fade out of existence. These efforts included the establishment of Kohanga Reo in the 1980s, the introduction of Kura Kaupapa Māori, Māori language immersion schools, and in the 1990s, the enactment of the Māori Language Act in 1987, which we've seen increased recognition and integration of Te Reo Māori in its various sectors. Each of these initiatives continue to contribute to the resurgence of the growth of Te Reo Māori, fostering cultural identity and promoting its use in everyday Aotearoa. So at this point, we've yet to see a cross-sector bilingual strategy that can be applied more broadly to increase the prevalence of this taonga Te Reo Māori. But we're hopeful that the insights from this particular research kaupapa will help us to take one step further on that journey. It's reaching the audacious goal of having 1 million Reo speakers by 2040 and help solidify Te Reo Māori as a primary language here in Aotearoa. So with that said, I'm going to try and hand over to Belinda.
Kia ora, everybody. Can you hear me? Hello. Yep. Okay, cool. Kia ora. For those that don't know me, I'm Belinda Chu and I am the online services manager for Archives New Zealand. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a background about how we came to this point at where we are. If I think back to when we first started having conversations, it was quite a while ago, I have to admit, and it was probably about 3 years ago that I initially contacted Adrian from Te Papa. I don't know if you're still there, Adrian. Maybe you want to wave to people. Yep. That's Adrian, everybody. So I contacted Adrian to see if Te Papa had a strategy around how to present Te Reo on their website. I thought if anybody will, Te Papa will. But Adrian confirmed that they didn't, and that a lot of other institutions do approach them asking exactly the same question. Then, as I had further conversations with Sam as well, all three of us kind of realised we were in a very similar situation, and that was whereby we had inconsistent and piecemeal approaches to the use of Te Reo content, and this can affect users expecting to see Te Reo on our websites. Potentially, this can have an effect of them feeling unwelcome while using our online services. And at that time, our institutions also had limited contextual information that had been translated into Te Reo. And we clearly had no overarching strategy or view from our stakeholders on how this could be presented. So we decided that this probably meant that we needed to look at undertaking some kind of research into exactly what our stakeholders would like to see on our websites. We felt also that embarking on this kind of research would be quite groundbreaking, and it's something that we can share with other GLAM sector organisations as well that are in a similar position to ours. We worked out what our key objectives would be from this research, and they were to identify the most effective ways to incorporate Te Reo Māori into our content, our online channels, and to ensure that our users had a good user experience. It was also to support the strategies for the revitalisation of Te Reo Māori and encourage the use throughout New Zealand. We soon realised that we didn't actually have probably the in-house capability or networks to undertake this type of research. And so we decided to collaborate together and look at undertaking a closed RFP to find the right partner to deliver this piece of work. And that's where IDEA came in. So back to you, Will.
Strength to strength, eh? Made you go all the way back over there and did better on the second time around that. That was awesome. All right, let's see how I do on this one. All right, so this particular kaupapa, what we set out to explore and understand. So yes, Belinda's briefly spoke about the key objectives that we have for this. And I guess as a question, this is kind of what it looked like. So the overarching goal, I guess what we wanted to understand was what makes Māori feel welcomed and that our language and our culture is valued when using online services. So as part of these research engagements, we inquired about the significance of Te Reo Māori to different people and the unique relationship with the language. This often extended into conversations about their upbringing, their own language learning journey, and the role Te Reo Māori plays in their day-to-day lives. We also invited people to think about which parts of the online experience should be available in Te Reo Māori, the quality of the translation, as well as the underlying principles in the presentation of Te Reo Māori. And throughout those we found a number of opportunities to enhance the experience, some of which came as a surprise to us, and it might come as a surprise to some of you as well. So we spoke with 22 speakers of Te Reo Māori with Whakapapa Māori. Now we collectively decided to prioritise the voices of tangata Māori throughout this initiative. This is due to each organisation's commitment to Mai Karana and our acknowledgement of tangata Māori of the Kaitiaki o Te Reo. We spoke with Māori tertiary students spanning a range of ages, including rangatahi, pakeke, and kaumātua. So young ones, oldish ones like me, and those are a bit older than me as well, I guess. At a beginner or intermediate level of real proficiency. We spoke with rangatahi Māori, currently enrolled in Wharekura, and we also spoke with first language speakers. As part of this kaupapa, we made efforts to bring the voice of whānau haua, tangata whaikaha, to the forefront and had the opportunity to speak with a few people from the disability community early on. However, after speaking with our people and further conversations with accessibility specialists and those who are advocates in the disability community, we recognise that there's more that we can do to manaki our people in the disability community to help them enable them to be more involved and provide greater direction on how we can create a more inclusive experience. But for tangata whaikaha, who are also speakers of Te Reo Māori. So as part of the recommendations moving forward, you'll see us talking about the importance of having this one and what we would suggest as part of that. We also did not speak directly with Te Reo speakers from government agencies and those who identified formally in the professional capacity as researchers. So how do we go about it? So we ran a number of interviews and a workshop accompanied by a handful of self-led online activities to accommodate those that weren't able to get on site to our tari for a particular reason. It also enabled us to speak to people who were in different corners of the world too. We began each interview with an open conversation with each person, talking about their individual relationships with Te Reo Māori, how accustomed they are with Te Reo, how they became accustomed with Te Reo, and what spaces make them feel most comfortable being Māori. And from there, we invited them to check out 4 different website examples that we carefully selected. The websites off the top of my head, Taura Whiri, Aotearoa, Stuff's Potiaki, I guess portion of their website, and Waikato Tainui. And each of these were chosen for different particular reasons, as they had different qualities and different approaches to the amount of reo that was being made available and how it was presented. We then asked for their whakaaro, for each participant's whakaaro around each website, concentrating on the quality of the reo, the amounts and the type. So this could be thinking about things such as the mito or the dialects perhaps, people mean things of that nature. and also thinking about how that it was visually presented. This also extended into things such as photography, I guess design elements such as the navigation considerations.
Sorry, can you speak up a little bit?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll do that for you. So during the workshops, we asked people to look at different content types. So this was more of a card sort experience where we took content from 3 particular websites: Archives New Zealand, Papers Past, as well as Te Papa Tongarewa's website. And what we did with the information from that, we set it aside and we invited each person to think about which content is most important to be available in Te Reo Māori. So this could be being translated or in the future coming from a Māori perspective first. And then from there, we have them break it down into what's most important, what's kind of important, and what's least important. The details of that are available in the report. We won't go through this today, but if you're interested, get into that. And from there, we invited people to evaluate a phased approach to designing, developing, and delivering a Reo website. So this is a dual language experience. So after many insightful discussions, we learned that a welcoming digital experience for Māori is underpinned by an āwhā Māori that expresses the value of Māori as a people, our language, and our culture, and encourages Māori to engage authentically as Māori. An āwhā Māori comprises of a combination of elements, including prominent use of Te Reo Māori. This could be navigation, headings, labels, and content. Inclusion and promotion of kaupapa Māori. Kaupapa Māori being Māori history, historical events, taonga Māori, anything inclusive of Te Ao Māori, and things that come with, I guess, a uniquely Te Ao Māori perspective. The addition of toi Māori, such as whakaaro or kōwhaiwhai, and imagery depicting taonga Māori and tangata Māori engaging in unique Māori ways. We talked about, I guess, one of those websites being Waikato Tainui earlier. Some of the photography from that, I guess, showed intergenerational exchanges or interactions between Se Mokopono and Kaumatua. This could be hongi, this could be hand-holding, making their way onto a marae, things of that nature, things that you would, as Māori, you would recognise. And this can all be complemented by audible elements such as waiaka, taonga puoro, and sounds of te taia. Beyond that, these were some of the key findings that came away from this research. There's more in the report, but these are the ones we'll talk through today. Te Reo Māori is of great significance to all speakers, regardless of how matata they are in the reo. So how confident, how familiar. There are very few spaces that invite Māori to be authentically Māori. Māori desire to see themselves in the Māori tonga reflected in the digital experience. Te Reo Māori content should be presented prominently. Translation efforts should begin with a focus on kaupapa Māori and educated resources where appropriate, come with a Māori perspective. And there's a strong desire for reo display with rumaki reo experiences and fully immersive reo Māori experiences considered by tawhiti. So I guess the ultimate end goal in this particular space. At this point, I'll probably take a little bit of time to dive into each of these a little bit more, give you a bit more context, hopefully a deeper understanding, and maybe a little bit more significance to this particular kaupapa. So Te Reo Māori is of great significance to all speakers, regardless of how matata they are in the reo. Those we spoke to highlighted the significant role Te Reo Māori has played in shaping their identity, their values, and their worldview. Regardless of their confidence to kōrero Māori, Te Reo Māori has been seen to be an integral part of their connection to their Māori tonga, not just for them, but also for their whānau. For second language speakers, or second language learners, learning Te Reo helps develop a sense of connection and belonging. While those older generations spoke of language loss and how reo was not valued during their childhood, while also highlighting unwavering support to ensure that we couldn't make their way to kura to have access to their reo and their tikanga. There's a strong desire for people to actively develop their understanding of Te Reo Māori and confidence in Te Reo Māori. But despite this, there are very few spaces that invite Māori to be authentically Māori. Spaces where it feels safe to kōrero Māori, and the whakaaro Māori would be appreciated and supported. Those who spoke with it often said that they rely on cues to guide them as to whether or not this is a mana enhancing space or a space that would be welcoming. It was often left up to them to seek or create spaces to kōrero and shift whakaaro Māori. Yeah, as previously mentioned, those we spoke to are actively looking for cues, indicators that suggest that the space there is welcoming to them, that our culture and our worldview are valued. There are a number of visual and audible cues that help to communicate the importance of culture. We spoke about some of those earlier. So there's photos of Māori people or taonga Māori, use of toi Māori, such as whakairo or whaiwhai. Photographs in particular, obviously tested quite well as a way to personalize the digital experience and how Māori see themselves reflected in the experience. It's created a space that feels safe and welcoming to tangata Māori. This becomes even more impactful when the photos include interactions between Māori of different generations, unique and relatable Māori interactions. Additionally, the sound of taonga puoro, Māori instrumentation, te taiao, the natural world and the environment, or waiata Māori help to let Māori know that they're in a space that values te ao Māori. When combined, there's different elements which create an ahua Māori. Māori feeling, evoking a feeling of familiarity, affirmation, and belonging. Now, thinking more holistically about the digital experience, there's an expectation that te reo Māori content will be presented prominently. Those who spoke with felt that Māori content should be displayed first, either from top to bottom, left to right, followed by the English equivalent. And those people also expected Māori content will be visually distinguishable to further communicate its importance and its value, making them feel that they're arrived at a place that again is welcoming and values te ao Māori. Continuing to think holistically about the digital experience at a foundational level, those we spoke to desire a dual language approach to headings, labels, and navigation. This not only suggests the organization's value of te reo, but also improve scannability for their Māori speakers and enhance their ability to navigate the website themselves. Dual language logos were appreciated as they showed the value of an organization has to te ao Māori and the commitment to sensitivity. However, those that we spoke with also highlighted that a change in organization's name or logo should only come about after an organizational change or shift. So, according to those we spoke to, right now it's important to focus more predominantly with our translation efforts on kaupapa Māori, at least in the very first instance. So this includes writings about Māori history, historical events, taonga Māori, ahurea Māori, Māori culture, and te ao Māori. Additionally, there's an opportunity to begin with whakaaro Māori and introduce the unique Māori perspective to Aotearoa history, which may currently be told from a predominantly Pākehā view. Now, incorporating this perspective will provide a more interesting and enriched experience for Māori audiences while conveying respect for te ao Māori history and the Māori perspective. Now, while the discussion primarily focused on prioritizing the translation of existing website content, at the moment there's an expectation that anything that's related to tangata Māori and te ao Māori would also be translated moving forward. Beyond kaupapa Māori, those that we spoke to highlighted the importance of educators and the essential role that they play in recentering histories and narratives regarding te ao Māori. Due to this, it was deemed vital to provide access to high quality resources to support teachers to achieve this, and that these resources should be offered in te ao Māori as there's a clear opportunity to find one of the languages across the country. Throughout the interviews and the subsequent workshop, we continue to hear of people's enthusiasm towards the Reo display, this positioning of the Reo Māori content alongside that of English content. While Rimaki Reo experiences were considered the ultimate future goal by first language speakers and proficient second language learners, all speakers of te reo Māori recognize the immediate value of a dual language approach. So I'm going to take a moment to kind of show you a little bit more about what that might look like. So currently, the vast majority of websites in Aotearoa are presented in English. Reo display takes a slightly different approach, as it takes a more mana-enhancing approach, perhaps, introducing substantive amounts of content in both te reo Māori and English, displaying them together simultaneously and inviting people to engage with te reo Māori while providing a quick and easy way to new people Māori and or double check their understanding of the content that's being presented. Dual language headings and navigation elements are designed to be visually distinct, and with te reo Māori supported by its English equivalent. Additionally, large, more substantive blocks of content are presented side by side. Te reo Māori positioned first on the left and English positioned second on the right. But there are a number of reasons as to why this design approach was preferable for speakers of te reo, and those are the beginning of their learning journey in particular. So this design approach invites those that are curious about te ao Māori the opportunity to draw closer to it. It caters to Te Reo Māori speakers with varying levels of familiarity, confidence, and understanding of Te Reo Māori. It supports learning and reclamation of the Reo Māori by providing people with an opportunity to apply and test their knowledge and understanding of Te Reo Māori, as well as the chance to discover new kupu, sentence structures, and ways of communicating different ideas. It also communicates the deliberate prioritization and appreciation of Te Reo Māori through the deliberate elevation and increased exposure to Te Reo Māori, the prominent display of Te Reo Māori, which encourages readers to engage with Māori first. So first language speakers and second language speakers, second language learners perhaps, with a greater grasp of Te Reo, supported the Reo Ero's display to help support those on their learning journey. Recognise that it also afforded them similar benefits in the way that they can easily double check their understanding of kupu that they're less familiar with, without needing to open up Te Aka in another tab or reach on a dictionary. Despite this, speaking of their own experience and their own personal preferences, Rimaki Reo experiences, I guess fully immersive Māori experiences are most preferable for those particular speakers, because it enabled and maintained whakaaro Māori as they went through it without any disruption from English content. So with this in mind, it was important to consider how we can design in a way that best builds towards this as we increase the number of Reo Māori speakers across Aotearoa. So I guess taking a little step back from this, during the interview phase, we recognised a strong desire to see the Reo display and acknowledged that we need to think about this further as we move forward. So our project team wanted to explore sites a little bit more. So we took the interview insights that we had and we ran an internal ideation session to explore these as different concepts. And then we started to think about what this approach might take. So we identified the core components of each of these website experiences, and then we just decided to break it down into a way that we could take a phased approach to, I guess, building, developing, and move towards something like this. This was then evaluated with Te Reo Māori speakers in the workshop. So thinking about the current state of play, we observed that the majority of digital experience developed in Aotearoa are largely English experiences, with very little Reo Māori content available, with whakaaro Māori included as part of the digital experience. Archives New Zealand, National Library, and Te Papa Tongarewa have already made efforts that extend beyond the starting point to create a more inclusive experience for Māori and speakers of Te Reo, but there's a strong desire to do more and move forward. Phase 1 focused on the introduction of dual language navigation and headings, supported by imagery of Taonga Māori, with the majority of the content remained in English. Phase 2 built upon the good groundwork delivered in Phase 1 and introduced the dual language presentation of large blocks of content available in both Te Reo Māori as well as English, with the options to toggle between the display of Reo Eroa, Māori, and English. And Phase 3 shared the vision of a fully immersive Reo Māori experience where all content is available in Te Reo Māori. During the workshop, we invited people and speakers of Te Reo Māori to evaluate this proposed phased approach. It was largely well received. People understood the phased approach, benefited each approach, and acknowledged the effort that might be involved to achieve this. However, despite this understanding, people wanted to jump from Phase 1 to Phase 2 sooner rather than later, but that's just what it is. So keeping it brief, there are still a number of findings that are in the report, which will probably be made available later, but I will summarise what we're at the moment. So today we've spoken about the increasing expectation to be able to access bilingual content as part of your digital services. We've also spoken about the desire to see Te Reo Māori presented prominently and the importance of creating, developing an Ahu Māori to help support tangata Māori to feel more welcome when accessing the digital services. Now, we recognise that this is part of a long journey. At this point, we'd probably like to think about what the organisations are willing to do and commit to enhance this experience for the staff and for those of you visitors. Archives New Zealand, the National Library, and Te Papa Tongarewa have already set forth on a journey to support the revitalisation of Te Reo Māori. And it's apparent there is more to be done to create a more equitable and enhancing digital experience. So this will require commitment, investment in people, particularly those with the skills to contribute and support the realisation of vision such as this. These people may include kaituhi, writers, kaifaka Māori, translators, those with design and development pukenga, and further engagement with our wider community to ensure we're developing the experience that is informed by the needs and aspirations of those community members. I guess acknowledging the collective investment in this research from Archives New Zealand, from National Library and Te Papa Tongarewa, we see an opportunity to continue as a cross-agency approach that would enable more widespread wānanga about the kaupapa, the opportunity to share insights more widely across each sector, and the possibility to create an aligned approach to developing bilingual services here in Aotearoa. Brings me to this. So thinking about where we are and where we might go next. So I recommend the next step on this journey would be to continue to prototype, test and evaluate the ideal and ideal Māori experiences with a broader segment of the community, such as Whakahaua, Tangata Whaikaha, to ensure an accessible and more inclusive digital experience for those accessing the digital services. Well, we've already evaluated some of those initial concepts as part of the workshop with speakers of Te Reo Māori, and these were well said. There are aspects of the responsive experience, smaller devices in particular, that probably benefit from additional exploration and other enhancements. We also acknowledge that we may want to do more to feel more confident and reassured about pushing forward in a direction like this due to the impact this might have in production environments and on like cross-website cross-organization impacts. So I guess in terms of steps, from this point, we recommend speaking directly with Tangata Whaikaha to understand how appealing this proposed approach is, and then create new concepts if required, and learn how to enhance the experience to be even more accessible to a wider audience. We'd also suggest digitizing these concepts with a focus on accessibility and responsive design, and from there, evaluating the prototypes more widely with Parker, Tauranga, and Tangata Tiriti. And that's kind of where we got to with this. I think there's enough chat, hey?